Welcome to another edition of the Noles Podcast. I am your host, Gregory McCoy. This podcast is by a fan for fans. I am not a journalist. I am not a reporter. I am not an insider. I do not work for a website. The majority of my content comes from me, in my opinion. Other information comes from the internet. Today is December 11th, 2021. No segments for this episode, just more Florida State football rambling or stuff. I think in almost 40 years of watching Florida State football and sometimes baseball, sometimes basketball, I've never cared about who the athletic director was. I just think for the average Joe Smo fan, they don't care who the athletic director is. They just want their team to win. And I pretty much fit into that category. I think in almost, again, 40 years of watching Florida State, mainly football, sometimes basketball, sometimes baseball, I know Stan Wilcox because he hired Willie Taggart. And I know this guy, I don't even know his name, that they hired yesterday. So I understand with the advent of the internet and the 24-hour news cycle and just all things have to be covered, that it's newsworthy to report who the athletic director is at Florida State, but I don't really care. I want my team to win games, get to national championships, and that's it. That's all I care about. So, we got the recruiting, early signing day coming up. I don't know how these boys are going to close. We've had a lot of attrition from the team over the past 2 weeks. Mostly just what I call gristle. Nobody of significance to me. I think the only guy I would really hold any kind of value on is Jaleel McRae. I thought his freshman year, he was, he had a pretty good year. Then I guess under Coach Marv, he kind of got in the doghouse. I'm guessing here, I don't know, because he didn't really see the field. I thought Steven Dix was going to be a starter coming into this past season. He didn't start. So I just hope this coaching staff can close well. Coach Marv goes to Virginia Tech. Again, I don't know nothing about the guy to have an opinion. I know he kind of helped Kalen DeLoach, flourish as a linebacker. I don't know if that was because of his coaching or because of the scheme or anything like that, but just from listening to stuff on other podcasts and on the internet, it was like him and Fuller didn't get along or whatever. I don't know. Again, I'm just a fan. I don't know what's the ins and outs of, the inner sanctums of the coaching staff, football coaching staff at Florida State. Nor do I care. I just, like I said, win games, get to the playoff, win the playoff, get to the championship game, win the championship game. That's what I care about. I don't fall in love with 4 and 5 star players. I think in the last 20 years, I've probably followed recruiting maybe 1 or 2 times, and that was for 3 players: Ernie Sims, Jameis Winston, and Dalvin Cook. I recently, like in the last 5 years, started following recruiting, like rabidly following it. Like, okay, did we get any 4 stars? Did we get any 5 stars? And you see where we are now. So 4 and 5 stars really don't mean anything. Is can you develop those guys? Like Alabama gets all the 4 and 5 stars you can stand, but they develop them, right? Georgia, they probably got more 4 and 5 stars. Their whole team is probably 4 and 5 stars, and they develop their players. So it's all about player development. If you don't develop the guys when they get there, it's really a moot point. So again, I hope this coaching staff can close well. I hope they can get some guys in there that can contribute immediately on the offensive line. The offensive line, to me, those 5 guys are probably the most, or I say 5 to 8 guys are probably the most important players on the team because they control so much. Okay? When they're playing, when you have 5 to 8 guys that play really well on the offensive line, you score points. You can go on long drives. You can dominate in the run game. You can give your defense the rest that they need to come in and get 3 and outs. So a lot of people say that the quarterback is the most important position in football. I disagree. I think it's all on the offensive line. Those 5 to 8 guys that you have on your team. It's really the to me, in my opinion, the most important group in all of football. And you just watch the Alabama-Georgia game, right? Their offensive line played really well, and they dominated. The defense sit on the sideline resting. They come in, and they get Georgia off the field. So, that's the blueprint that I would love to see Florida State follow. The strength and conditioning at Florida State thus far sucks. Okay? Because, you just got player after player that can't stay on the field continuously, especially on the offensive line. So I would like to see, and I'm not taking a shot at the strength and conditioning coach. I'm just saying this program sucks, in my opinion. When your boys are getting pushed around, when your receivers can't get off the jam, that's strength and conditioning. That's not talent. So I would just love to see the strength and conditioning take a monumental leap into the 2022 season. What else? Brad Johnson's sons are free agents. I think that would be a great pickup. Or, I'm sorry, the quarterback is, I guess his oldest son from LSU is a free agent. His younger son, the tight end, is still a high school recruit. So let me rephrase that. And the younger son, the tight end, reopened his recruitment because he was committed to LSU. I think that would be a great opportunity to bring that guy in and let him compete with Jordan Travis. I still feel like Jordan Travis should be number 1 on the depth chart, but make him compete. Because Mackenzie Milton did make him elevate his game. And maybe Max Johnson can make Jordan Travis elevate his game even further. Or maybe Max Johnson can come in and take the starting position. When you're a head coach, you can't really have a bias allegiance to any one player. You have to make them compete. If they don't want to compete in practice, what makes you think they want to compete in games? So I think no matter who you bring in, Jordan Travis should be the unquestioned number 1, but I think you make him compete for it. Like, he's number 1 on the depth chart, but he's not a lock. Okay, you bring somebody in to compete and push him, and you just see, okay, can he continuously elevate his play and elevate his game? I think you got to get some more offensive linemen. You got to find some kind of way to develop Lloyd Willis, a guy that's 6'7", 300 pounds. Okay, very lean. He looks very athletic. You have to find some kind of way to develop him. Rod Orr has to play next year. Okay. And obviously Gibbons is going to be a starter. I would move Darius Washington to center. And, I don't know what you do with Maurice Smith, but obviously he, against the very good interior lineman, he sucks. He's an undersized center that's not strong. Darius Washington is a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. He's not a tackle. I keep saying that. He's an interior lineman. He played that one game at center and he played very well. But they keep putting him at tackle. I guess maybe because he's the only one that can play that position somewhat okay. But when he goes up against elite pass rushers, he's on rollerblades. I think when Travis Hunter comes on campus, I think the fan base has to set a realistic expectation for him. I know he's kind of compared himself to Deion Sanders and saying that he's going to bring the program back or up or whatever like Deion did. I mean, those are lofty expectations, and he may exceed those expectations. He may meet those expectations, but me as a fan, I'm not going to hold him to that standard. I mean, just beat Jalen Ramsey. Okay? Can you just beat him? Okay? You know, and there's nothing wrong with setting the bar too high. But if those are the goals for himself, great. But, I'm not going to put that kind of pressure on that kid, man. Because he, number one player in the nation. That's already enough pressure. Okay, he's committed to Florida State. That's enough pressure. He stayed committed to Florida State through this whole season. That's enough pressure. So, I just think that, the fan base, not really him, the fan base, because this kid is going to make mistakes. Every player does. And I just, every fan base has those fans that are just crazy. And I just don't want the crazies to come out because this guy isn't Deion. And I think, he's kind of pigeonholed himself because that's what the fan base is expecting. We've seen 5 stars come to this school before and fail. And I just hope he's not in that category. I mean, I've only seen highlights of him. And I usually don't follow recruiting like that. I really didn't get into recruiting until about 2015. Up until that point, it was just, just get some guys, coach them up, and let's see what happens. That was really my philosophy. Because 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, it's all somebody's opinion, right? We don't know how a player is going to translate from high school to college and from college to the pros. You just don't know how their game is going to, translate. I mean, there's certain guys you just know. Ernie Sims, Dalvin Cook, Jalen Ramsey, Jameis Winston. You just knew that, okay, when these guys get to the pros, they're going to be, somewhat good to great. The same thing when they came from high school to Florida State. I knew, especially Ernie Sims and Dalvin Cook. I was like, okay, these guys are going to be good. I was reading a message board from a Clemson fan, and I really wasn't on the Clemson message board. It just popped up on one of my Instagram Florida State things that I follow, and it was like, to all the players that decommit, I hope you have a terrible career. Like, that's just, come on, man. That's just going too far. Players that decommit from Florida State, I don't take it that seriously, man. If, every fan base has those kind of fans, though. And I just hope that they don't come down on these guys like Clemson does. Clemson's in a bad way right now. Okay? They've lost their offensive coordinator, their defensive coordinator, and their athletic director. So, wow, I mean, it might be over for Clemson. Your boy was like the roaring 20s when he lost to LSU. Was it last January, 2020? It might be over for the Clemson dynasty. Might be over, man. In the ACC, it might be over. We got to see who they hire, man. And I'm not happy because I wanted them to stay good. So when we got back good, we could go on a run and start whooping those guys again. But it is what it is. I'm just glad that Florida State has some kind of, continuity. We didn't make any changes. The only changes we made was, Marv, he got the job. Coach Marv got the job at Virginia Tech. So we didn't really fire anybody. I think, that's great for the program. But we got to get our strength and conditioning up. And we got to find 5 to 8 offensive linemen that can play. We don't need patchwork guys. We need a Power 5 offensive line. We might have the worst offensive line in Power 5. I mean, we right there with Duke and Vanderbilt. We right there with Duke and Vanderbilt in terms of offensive lines. And they might have better offensive lines than us. Like I said earlier on this episode, man, offensive line to me is the most important position group in football because they determine so much. A lot of people say quarterback. Would you rather have a great quarterback or 5 great offensive linemen? I think I'd rather have the 5 great offensive linemen because you can find a no-star quarterback that can come in and make the throws. If you give him time to throw. Anybody can make throws if you give him time to throw. Okay? But even your Trevor Lawrences, your Jameis Winstons, your Lamar Jacksons, whoever you want to put back there, if they don't have time to throw, it's a moot point. So you seen it when Winston played Oregon. You seen it when Lawrence played LSU. If you don't have time to throw, it don't matter how many stars you got. It don't matter how big your arm is. So, just point of emphasis for Florida State football, you got to find 5 guys that can block. And as far as the defensive line goes, it's going to be kind of hard, if not impossible, to find another Jermaine Johnson. I mean, you're talking about just a phenomenal talent. ACC Defensive Player of the Year, first team All-American. I mean, we haven't had one of those guys in a long time. So, tremendous find by the Florida State staff. Tremendous job of using him the right way. We just have to, hopefully, just get some stopgap guys. I think it'll probably be easier to find some guys closer to Kier Thomas than it will be Jermaine Johnson. But, hopefully those two guys coming to Florida State and the way they were utilized, maybe that can, show some of these guys in the portal, hey, I can go to Florida State and be used in the right manner to elevate my game and potentially, be an early draft pick in the NFL draft. It's not going to be easy rebuilding that defensive line. I think Cooper coming back, and potentially Lovett staying, would be tremendous. So that will go a long way. Then you got Malcolm Ray that's coming along pretty good. You got Jared Jackson that's coming along pretty good. So you got some pieces. You would hope that you could get a Marvin Jones Jr., but I don't think you're going to get him. I think we'll see, man. We got 3 days until the early signing day. So we'll see, but just from what I've seen on Instagram and social media, the staff has been getting after it in terms of these recruits. So the dead period is upon us, and we'll see if all their hard work has paid off, and just hopefully we can bring in a top 10 class, which would be a tremendous get for a 5-17. And looking down the barrel of the 2022 season, I just hope that we can get off to a good start and finish strong. So that's going to conclude this episode. It's available on YouTube. It's available on all podcast platforms. Thank you for listening, and go Noles.